Good afternoon, folks. This is Chip Jackson. This is the Being There Outdoor Club Survival and Outdoor page. I am going to go over today how you can check your tent for a trip or to store it long term, which is going to be kind of the same thing in that you're going to be checking all the seams to make sure that they're okay and in good order. You're going to be checking the threading in those seams to make sure that's good. We're also going to be checking the waterproof material on the surfaces to make sure that's sound and in good order. We're going to be checking the poles. We're going to be checking the bathtub bottom of the tent, and I'm going to just be sharing general tips and things that I do when using my equipment in order to maintain it and use it for as many years as possible. We're going to be talking about the Foxhole 2 tent today. It is made by Kelty, and it's a little on the heavy side. It's about 6 pounds pack weight, which is a little on the heavy side, but I'm used to it. My entire pack weight generally runs about 58 to 62 pounds. You know, my pack and everything that I carry. And I usually, depending on the food that you have to carry, that weight can change a bit. So I'm going to set my phone down over here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. And we're just going to go through it nice and slow and figure out how to store our tent and check our tent for trips and long-term storage. Okay, so I've got my tent here out in front of me, as you can see. I've already kind of taken it out of its travel sleeve. It's a simple bag that it slides down into, and then I attach it to the bottom of my bag over here. Okay, so the first thing you're going to see here is this is the sleeve for the pole system. I'm going to check the poles. I'm not going to open up the poles, but I will show you it's a pretty significant little system there, and it opens up into like a kind of a double U shape. And I'm just kind of looking them over. Everything looks like it's in really good order. You'll see here the end, this is where it goes into the grommet on the bottom. Okay, so you want to make sure that's good. That it's got no excessive debris on there or anything like that. You don't want any mud on there. You're kind of looking at there's a stretchy cord, kind of a bungee cord on the inside that helps keep everything together. You're just kind of looking at that, looking for any signs of fraying. If I really wanted to, I could kind of open everything up and just see how it's doing. But my tent's been stored properly, so I'm pretty sure everything's in good order. I just want to double check everything. So this looks, the pole system looks really good. Usually these are made out of aluminum. Sometimes they'll make them out of carbon fiber. Those tend to be the more expensive ones. And it's just the system that kind of suspends the tent and gives it rigidity against the wind and the elements. This is a 4-season tent. It is designed to go out year-round. That's part of the reason why it's a little on the heavy side, because the material has to be a little bit more robust. You can get a 2-season tent, spring, summer, or a 3-season tent, spring, summer, fall, or a 4-season tent, spring, summer, fall, winter. The price usually goes up a little bit as you get a more robust tent, just so you know. Here's the package for the tent stakes. They have all kinds of different tent stakes out there. You got tent stakes that are designed to go into rock, believe it or not. You got crampons and stuff that they use. And then you have ice tent stakes, you have snow tent stakes. I use the copper alloy tent stakes, and I believe these are made by Kelty actually makes these, now that I think about it. And what's cool about the copper ones is the copper alloy with the aluminum will take a bend. You can bend this stake and then put it back in place, and it's still pretty good for you. Some of the steel stakes, that as soon as you bend them, they're done. They're just worthless. They snap off, and you got to do something else. I mean, you can use like a twig, and then you can do what's called a dead man, and I can explain that to you real fast. So let's pretend this is a rock, shall we? And okay, so we're going to dig a hole. We're going to tie the cord from the tent to the rock. We're going to place it down in the hole and put tension on that cord. And then we're going to cover the hole back up with the dirt and bury it, creating a dead man. What that does is it will anchor your tent very firmly to the ground. Usually that's used for long term, if you're going to be in that area for a good while, and you want to make sure that you're good and safe, especially if the winds get up. That's a good way to do it. So those are just kind of the tent stakes and the pole system. Now I'm going to show you the Rainfly, which is the big orange thing right here in front of me. Most 3 to 4 season tents have what's called a Rainfly. It's a completely waterproof cover that will go over the entire tent and kind of angle out. And I always joke they kind of look like turtles. But it'll keep the rain off you, and it gives you an entranceway with what's called a vestibule, which is a dry area between the outside Rainfly and the inside tent, and you can kind of put your gear and stuff. It's kind of helpful. So my Rainfly has, I've had this tent for quite a few years. My Rainfly actually got damaged one time. If you see the black tape right here, that's Gorilla Tape. And I sewed it with a monofilament fishing line called Spider Wire. And this stuff is 500 pounds per test. And I doubled and tripled it up all through here. A limb had actually fallen on my Rainfly and ripped it really badly, and caused rain to actually get in my tent that night. And when I came home, I fixed it. And after I had fixed it, my mom was out back playing with the dogs and the hose, and one of the dogs jumped on it, so I had to fix it again. So I tried to over-engineer it, and I put seam seal on it, and it's good as new. Doesn't look like new, but it works good as new. Okay, so we're looking at the clips now, all the sewn seams. You know, you can just kind of glance these over and see, okay, you know, is there any threads that are bare? Are there any seams that are coming apart? Are the straps still attached well? Is the nylon in good condition? Because I can tell you, these nylon straps are susceptible to UV damage. If it gets too much direct UV, they will start to kind of dry up and just turn to dust. So it's really good to kind of keep your eye on that, and use Nix wax or even saddle soap. A little bit of saddle soap will keep these nice and supple and help waterproof them, and it will give you a longer life out of your tent. Everything looks really good, actually. Not to toot my own horn here, but when I stored it, I did it rather well from the last trip. There's a little bit of dirt and stuff like that, you know, in here, but it's nothing to be really that worried about, because I'm getting ready to store it long term. So I don't have to worry about that dirt grinding on anything and messing anything up, because as soon as I pick it up, it's all going to fall out and I vacuum it away. So everything looks really good. All the seams look really good on this. The Rainfly looks really good, and I can feel that it still has good water resistant materials on there. I don't need to spray it down with anything like a Nix wax or anything like that. Say hi, Charlie. Okay. And then, so we're going to move this aside. This is the Rainfly. We're done kind of inspecting that. I'm going to look at these other straps and make sure everything is good really quickly. That's a guy line. Okay, and that goes up inside of here. And that looks, all these look really good. All the zippers look really good. All the straps are nice and flexible the way they should be. When they start to get old and messed up, they lose flexibility. They'll actually stiffen, and you have a hard time kind of moving them around. And that's when you know you need to either do something right away or look at maybe replacing it. Okay, so we're going to set this aside for right now. Okay, and now I'm looking, this is the bottom of the tent. Okay, this is what's called the bathtub floor of the tent. I'm going to show you that here, and you can kind of see it's gray, right? And this is the thicker part of the tent that's given a heavy waterproofing treatment to make sure that it's like a bathtub. It keeps the water out so that you don't get flooded, and most of them can take a pretty good amount. So I'm going to set this back down, and I'm looking for any visible holes, any visible defects in the material. I'm looking at seams. I'm looking at the zippers. I'm looking at the meshing on the window parts, the vent windows that most tents have. I'm looking at all those things. I'm looking at the clips, you know, kind of checking those, making sure none of the clips are broken. All the material is still in good working order and properly attached to the seams like it's supposed to. Like I said, this tent looks really good. All the zippers look really good. Everything seems like it's in really good shape. The grommets are good, which is where the pole will actually insert into that grommet, and it creates a rigid structure. Again, everything just looks really good. Now the next part we're going to check is called the footprint. I'm going to check one more thing on this before I... Yeah, it's just in really good shape. And I try to take really good care of my tents, because if you take care of them, first of all, that's your house. Like when you're out there, that's your shelter. So you need to make sure it's good. And if you take good care of it, and you do some of the tips that I'm going to share with you here in a minute, you can actually get a lot of years out of your tent. And you know, they're expensive. A good tent is like good boots, right? Good boots aren't cheap, and cheap boots aren't good. Same thing with the tent. Good tents aren't cheap, and cheap tents are seldom good. You know, you can go to Walmart and you can buy one of their little $50, $60, $80 tents, and you might get a season out of that tent, but it's going to start to break down pretty quickly. So not the route that I would go, but in a pinch it will work, and there's things that you can do to make them work better. But just realize it's a temporary fix. That tent's going to break down. It's going to break down, it's going to rip, it's going to fall apart, and you're going to have to do something else. Okay, so here we're going to look at what's called the footprint. Okay, every tent that you buy out there, even the crappy ones, they have what's called a footprint. This is a piece of fabric that is usually similar to a tarp, heavily treated with waterproofing, and it goes under your tent to create a footprint for your tent to sit on, so that the bathtub portion of your tent is not setting directly on the ground. It will take less damage this way. You'll get a longer life out of your tent this way, because if your tent is touching the ground, it's going to wear this out very quickly. This is easier to replace than the entire bottom of the tent. I would rather replace roughly a 9x4 piece of tarp than to replace a $300 to $400 tent maybe. Okay. Again, looking at all the sewn seams, making sure everything is intact. Looking at all your straps, making sure they're in good order. Everything looks really good. When I put this tent away the last time I used it a couple years ago, I was able to kind of clean it on site. You know, I shook it all out. So there's really, I did a really good job putting it away. I'm actually pretty pleased with myself. Okay, so everything looks really good, guys. I don't need to treat it. I don't need to do anything special to it. So now all I'm going to do is just kind of put everything back together, roll it back up, and then I'm going to store it long term in my storage closet where I keep all my gear. So that's basically it. You're just checking everything to make sure that it's good to go. Now, a couple of quick tips. If you really want to go to town on this thing and really want to clean it really, really well, set your tent up. Set it up completely in like your front yard or wherever, where you know it's not going to get messed with. Then you're just going to take a dry cloth and kind of wipe everything out, make sure everything's good. Then you're going to get a nice bowl of warm or hot water. Put a little bit of dish soap in there, Dawn or anything like that. Any mild dish soap will do fine. You don't want to use anything too harsh, because it will actually break down the waterproofing. You just wipe it down, get it wet, physically get it wet, and then wipe it all down, and then let it dry out. And then something I like to do that helps: number one, keep the bugs away; number two, keep the mildew away; and number three, it just makes the tent kind of nice. I will close up all the vents, set the tent up, put the rain fly on, and button everything up, and then get my favorite incense. Like I like to use eucalyptus or a rosewood or a patchouli, anything like that. Mint's really good too, because bugs don't like mint. The mint actually burns them. So I'll set off my incense in there and let that burn completely out. Later I'll remove that again, wipe out any ash or anything like that, clean it up really good, and it makes the tent smell really nice for the next time you get in it. And then if you use the eucalyptus or anything like that, that has natural antibacterial and viral qualities to it, and it will help your tent not mildew. And I tell you right now, if your tent mildews, it's going to completely screw up that fabric. So that's something you have to worry about. So that is the Being There Outdoor Club. Thanking you for your time. And that is how you check your tent for a trip or to store it long term.